"Shut up, human! I am not asking, get in my bed now!" Crazy, lustful alien demanded. Rylan feels the thunder of his own heartbeat reverberate in his ears, the distant explosions from overhead assault craft drowning out every coherent thought. His boots pound the dusty, debris-littered street as he races around a corner, shoulder pressed tight against a half-collapsed building for cover. The city is a hellscape of twisted metal and scorched rubble, once a thriving colony for humans. Now just a battered war zone on an alien planet that's turned hostile. His lungs burn with each breath, and he can still taste the metallic tang of blood in his mouth, courtesy of a crash landing that left him half concussed and bleeding from a gash above his eyebrow. He's not supposed to be here, not supposed to be alive after the data smuggling mission went south, but here he is, alone, hunted and cornered. A high-pitched whine slices through the air, forcing him to flatten himself against the wall. Something mechanical streaks overhead, a scout drone searching for survivors, scanning for heat signatures. He hears the scanning beam crackle, pass, by then fade. He stays perfectly still, eyes narrowed, teeth gritted. The second he tries to shift his weight, a dark blur whips around the corner. He's ready to raise his weapon, but something impossibly fast knocks it aside with a ringing clang that reverberates up his arm. He staggers, off balance, and sees a flash of deep blue skin, long black hair, pointed ears. The alien moves so fluidly, it's as if she's part shadow, part lethal force. Her eyes catch a brief glint of sunlight, dark, reflective, burning with something he can't pin down. She sweeps a leg around, hooking his ankle with brutal precision. He goes down onto his back with a jarring crash, and all the air blasts from his lungs. Her knee pins his chest, an arm presses down across his throat. He catches a glimpse of her face, feline in its intensity, fierce and undeniably captivating. He's grappled with aliens before, but never one so poised, so controlled, as if every micro-movement is an art form. She doesn't kill him. Instead, she yanks his dog tags, hisses in a voice that sounds like a low, throaty purr edged with a blade. Human soldier. Surrender. He coughs, tries to slam an elbow into her side. She shifts, lightning quick, pressing harder against his windpipe until little black spots dance at the corners of his vision. He releases the tension in his arm, a pseudo-surrender just to get oxygen back. She leans closer, eyes narrowing. "Get off!" he growls, voice strangled. She doesn't move. Her gaze rakes over him, absorbing every detail. The city around them is still erupting with chaos, distant gunfire, crumbling towers, the wail of sirens. But here, in this moment, it's like the two of them are locked in a private duel. At last, she eases pressure from his neck, just enough so he can breathe, though he feels the bruise forming. He sucks in a ragged breath, focusing on the dangerous beauty who's pinning him. When she speaks again, her voice is potent with authority. "You're mine." The words are more demand than statement, and his battered pride roars in protest, but he's pinned. Her knee digs deeper into his sternum, forcing his spine into the broken pavement. His pride flares white-hot. He tries to buck her off again, but her reflexes are inhuman. A glancing blow to his temple sends him reeling, and his vision blurs, the world spinning. She seizes his wrists, her grip like iron, and slams them down. "Stop!" he chokes, unsure if it's an order or a plea to remain conscious. She holds him there, breath hot against his cheek, and for a second he notices the sweet electric charge of her scent. Spicy, alien, undeniably alluring. He tenses, expecting a final blow or a blade at his throat, but it doesn't come. Instead, she slides off him in a graceful move, grabbing his shirt collar and hauling him upright. He staggers, half blind, pinned against the fragmented wall. She gives him a once-over, expression predatory, then pulls him close until their noses nearly touch. The faint glow of her skin flickers along her collarbone, an odd luminescence responding to adrenaline or something else. He stares, both repelled and drawn in. She's not quite like any other alien he's encountered. "Don't struggle," she commands, as if it's the most obvious thing in the world. He tries to jerk free, but her fists grip his collar, and the sneer curling her lips suggests she's barely begun to exert effort. He tries to speak, but that commanding, enthralling gaze stops him. Then she yanks him fully around the corner, shoving him down a dark alley, away from the overhead drones. "What the hell?" he manages to rasp out before she presses him up against the shadowy bricks. Her forearm pins him across the chest, and she leans in, her breath a hot whisper against his ear. "You value your life, human?" The question is blunt. He doesn't answer. Instead, he glares with defiance. She releases a low, almost mocking sound. "I'm not going to kill you, but if you want to escape this city alive, you'll do exactly as I say." She shifts, letting him breathe properly again, though she still hovers within striking distance. He lifts a hand and wipes the blood trickling from his temple, trying to regain some semblance of composure. Around them, the city sounds intensify. Gunfire, explosions, the rumble of entire structures collapsing in the distance. He stares, back, scanning her face. So many questions rattle through his mind. Who she is, why she hasn't killed him, what she wants. But she's radiating that same dangerous confidence, and even as he resents her, there's a spark in his gut that's undeniably intrigued. She gestures sharply for him to move, and he decides for the moment to comply. He doesn't have better options. They dart through the alley, pressed against walls to avoid the roving drone lights overhead. The air is thick with smoke and dust. His boots crunch on broken glass, and he tries to hush each step. She leads him through a half-collapsed side street, weaving with uncanny grace around burning vehicles and downed rubble. At one point, a patrol of heavily armed alien soldiers appears at the street's end, scanning for survivors. He stiffens, fear curling cold in his gut. He's weaponless, battered. If the woman who captured him is allied with them, he's finished. But she snatches his wrist, pulling him into a blackened doorway, pressing her body flush against his, to block them from sight. Her palm lands against his chest to keep him pinned, eyes locked on the enemy patrol. He's forced to stand there, chest to chest with her, hearts pounding. Her eyes flicker with an alert predatory focus, ignoring how close they are. He can feel the sinewy strength in her arms, the heat radiating from her. Her hair brushes against his cheek, soft as midnight. He wants to shove her back, but the entire city is deathly quiet, except for the droning patrol. Any sudden movement or noise could give them away. And he realizes with a jolt he's not even sure she's on the same side as those soldiers. She might be as hunted as he is. They wait, pressed together, until the squad passes. The moment. They're gone. She exhales a quiet breath and steps away, turning to face him with that unwavering intensity. She doesn't apologize for the closeness. She doesn't even acknowledge it. Her only reaction is a quick tilt of her head, a curt command. "Move. We have to get off this street." He follows her again, weaving through the labyrinth of smoldering ruins, until they come upon a shattered structure that might have once been an administrative building. She forces open a side hatch, and they slip inside. It's dark, lit only by flickering emergency lights. Debris is strewn everywhere. Desks overturned, windows shattered. The entire wing seems deserted. She leads him deeper into the building until they find a secure room with no windows, just a single door and half-busted ventilation vents overhead. She slams the door shut behind them, checks a control panel that sparks to life, then locks it. From the inside, the sound of grinding metal indicates a heavy security mechanism sliding into place. He stands there, breathing hard, trying to figure out what the hell is going on. She paces for a moment, then turns, crossing her arms beneath her chest. The dull glow from the overhead emergency light illuminates her silhouette, a dangerous beauty that leaves him on edge. Her black hair falls in a sleek, heavy curtain down her back. Her ears, pointed and alert, flicker as she listens for any sign of intruders. Then her gaze snaps to him. "You, soldier, what's your name?" Her tone is clipped, impatient. He considers lying. But something about the intense set of her jaw, the steely look in her eyes, warns him that deception could be fatal. He decides to test her anyway, giving the partial truth. "Rylan." "Rylan," she repeats, as if tasting the syllables. She moves closer, crossing the small space in 3 strides. Her presence fills the room, a potent mix of danger and allure. She stands so near, her breath warms his cheek. He clenches his fists at his sides, not wanting to appear weak. "I'm Kael'ari," she states. "You are going to help me infiltrate the system core on the far side of the city. And if you refuse—" He scoffs, cutting her off. "I'm done taking orders from any alien." The second the words leave his mouth, her hand flashes out. A blur of motion. She seizes him by the collar again, slams him against the nearest wall. A spike of pain radiates through his shoulder, but the shock is overshadowed by the jolt of adrenaline coursing through his veins. "You're in no position to deny me," she snarls, eyes narrowed. "I could have left you to die in the street, or handed you over to those patrols." She releases him with a forceful shove that has him staggering. He collects himself, jaw set. "And why didn't you?" For a moment, Kael'ari's expression flickers with something like annoyance or intrigue. "Because you humans have valuable knowledge about the enemy's countermeasures," she says. "You know how to slip past scanners, how to bypass certain frequencies in your machines. I need that if I'm to sabotage their central command." He stands taller, sets his jaw. "And what's in it for me?" "Survival," she replies bluntly. "Help me, or die here, trapped in a city that's about to be leveled." Her words ring with cold truth. He's got no illusions about the state of this city. If it's about to be purged by the occupying forces, he won't last another day, not with his injuries and no backup. Gritting his teeth, he weighs the risks. This alien is obviously skilled, possibly dangerous enough to keep him alive at least. A little longer, and deep down, he's not entirely opposed to being in her company. There's a magnetic pull that sets his blood thrumming. It's more than just survival. She's mesmerizing, a living challenge he both fears and can't tear himself away from. Finally, he mutters, "Fine, we'll see how this goes." She nods sharply, as if that's all the confirmation she needs, and then she starts rummaging through the debris, pulling open compartments, searching for weapons, supplies, anything that might prove useful. He watches for a moment, then joins in. They find a half-charged plasma rifle, a set of rations, and a medical kit with rudimentary supplies to patch up minor injuries. Rylan wastes no time cleaning the wound on his temple, pressing a temporary seal onto the gash. Kael'ari glances at him, eyes narrowing as she takes in the battered state of his body. She says nothing, but she steps closer and, with surprising gentleness, adjusts the dressing to make sure it's secure. He tenses under her touch. Her skin is hot, almost electric against his own, but there's a tenderness in her motion that contradicts her earlier aggression. Without a word, she steps back. They gather what they can, share an unspoken agreement that they're both trapped in this together. The building trembles from a distant blast, the overhead lights flickering. She glances upward, lips tight. "We need to move. This place won't hold." He shoulders the plasma rifle, adjusts the straps. "Lead on." She unlocks the door, stepping out cautiously. The corridor is silent, except for the crackle of small fires that still burn along the collapsed corners. She gestures for him to follow, eyes scanning for threats. They slip back into the war-torn streets, weaving through the debris, and for a moment neither speaks. They're an unlikely pair. An alien rogue with uncertain loyalties, and a human soldier who's lost everything except his own stubborn will to survive. Every step is a test of trust. Whenever she raises a hand to signal a stop, he obeys. Instincts. screaming that one day she might just turn around and snap his neck if he displeases her. When he silently points out a vantage spot or indicates the path of a patrolling drone, she follows his lead. Their synergy grows in small increments, wordless and tense, but undeniably effective. At one point, they hunker down behind a collapsed supply truck, letting another patrol pass. Kael'ari edges up behind him, pressing her body to his back, gripping his shoulder so he can't lurch forward in surprise. He tries to ignore how acutely aware he is of every point of contact. She breathes, barely audible, into his ear. "See that? They're scanning for any heat signatures larger than a meter wide. Keep low, keep close." He swallows, focusing on the threat, trying not to dwell on the heat of her breath. They inch forward, practically glued together, her front pressed to his back. He feels her heart beating in a swift, assured rhythm, and it sets off an involuntary flush across his chest. She's calm, even while pinned between enemy patrols. It almost arouses a grudging respect in him, and a stirring of something else, more primal. The patrol moves on, and they slip deeper into the city, at times forced to crawl through the twisted wreckage of buildings, at others forced to sprint across open courtyards while bullets or energy blasts zip overhead. Several times they have to fight, though fight is a strange word for what Kael'ari does. She moves like a living weapon, spinning, slashing, turning each confrontation into a brutal dance of lethal grace. Rylan covers her with ranged support, picking off hostiles with the rifle. She admires his skill in curt acknowledgements, but mostly they exchange nods, wordless confirmations that each has the other's back. Eventually, they find a temporary refuge, a forgotten basement level beneath what might have been a commerce building. The walls are cracked, water dripping in from overhead pipes, but it's defensible. Only one entrance, shielded from scanners by the thick structure above. The tension in Ryland's limbs is overwhelming. They've been at this for hours, maybe longer. He can't tell. The days and nights blur together in perpetual firefights and narrow escapes. He drops down against a cold wall, chest rising and falling. Kael'ari stands across from him, scanning the stairwell they came from. Her breathing is calm, despite the endless sprinting and fighting. At length she turns, gaze locking onto him with that same unwavering intensity that first pinned him to the ground. The overhead light from a broken fixture flickers, casting dancing shadows along her face and body. He notices again how her skin seems to glow faintly in the darkness, highlighting the elegant lines of her collarbones, the toned muscles in her arms. He tries not to stare, but she steps closer, bridging the distance. Her eyes reflect the dim light like polished onyx, unreadable yet piercing. For a moment, neither speaks, the silent tension like a storm cloud threatening to break. He's tired, battered, half delirious from the onslaught of adrenaline, but he still musters the mental energy to wonder, what is she thinking? Why is she staring at him like this? She crouches, leveling her gaze with his. "You're more useful than I expected," she says. It's almost a compliment. He shrugs, failing to hide his annoyance, but there's a flicker of a grin at the corners of his mouth. He can't help it. Surviving alongside her has felt strangely exhilarating, even if it's a lethal partnership. He opens his mouth to retort, but a tremor passes through the building, dust cascading from the ceiling. They both look up. Another airstrike, or maybe the city's central power grid failing. Kael'ari stands quickly and offers him a hand. He hesitates, but then clasps it. Her grip is firm, and when she pulls him to his feet, he's momentarily off balance, almost toppling into her. She doesn't move away. Suddenly, they're standing chest to chest in the dim basement. He can see the faint pulse in her throat, the same quickening he feels in his own. His breath catches. He half expects her to shove him away, to issue another curt order. Instead, she lifts a hand and traces the edge of one of his scars, a small white line across his jaw. It surprises him that her touch can be so light, so curious. He inhales a shaky breath as her fingertips linger, sliding up to brush across the bruise on his temple. Her gaze flicks between the bruise and his eyes. He sees a flash of something in her expression, a fierce protectiveness or hunger. He can't decide which. He almost speaks, but she leans in before he can form words. The kiss is sudden, brutal in its intensity. Her lips crash against his, and he feels the desperation, the pent-up adrenaline, and the stark reality that they might die any second. It's not tender, it's not sweet. It's warlike, a claiming of territory, a swirl of desperation and raw, undeniable attraction. His head spins. He grips her hips, not sure if he's pushing her away or pulling her closer. Her skin beneath his palms is scorching, electric. She tastes like danger, sweat, blood, and something uniquely alien that sets every nerve in his body. A light. He growls against her mouth, and she responds by biting his lower lip, a possessive gesture that sends a jolt of pain and pleasure straight to his core. They crash backward against the wall, locked in a struggle that's equal parts lust and battle, limbs tangling, hearts hammering. He hisses as her teeth scrape along his jawline, and she laughs low in her throat, that purring sound that made him uneasy the first time they met. Now it makes his blood roar. He manages to flip their positions, pinning her against the cracked concrete. His forearm braces the wall beside her head. She arches her back, pressing herself against him, the minimal straps across her torso, leaving most of her skin bare. He's nearly dizzy from the scent of her, that spicy alien warmth radiating off her skin. He remembers her words from before, that lethal command, "You're mine." In this moment, he's not sure which of them is taking possession. The sea, line between captive and captor, has blurred. Her hands slide under his shirt, nails grazing the hard planes of his abdomen. He sucks in a sharp breath at the sensation. She's surprisingly strong, fingers exploring the ridges of his muscles, tracing old scars. He feels something primal rise up, an urge to prove he's not just a toy or a means to an end. He wants to dominate her the way she tried to dominate him. He dips his head to her neck, kisses rough and desperate, tasting salt and smoke. She hisses his name between her teeth, a sound that's half warning, half plea. "Rylan," she growls. "Less talk, more." He silences her with another fierce kiss. Their breathing comes in ragged bursts, bodies pressed together in a tight, urgent heat. This is insane, he thinks. They're in a collapsing city, surrounded by enemies, their lives hanging by a thread, and here they are, devouring each other in the flickering darkness. But that danger only fuels the moment, drives it to a near-feverish pitch. They stumble through the cramped space, half tearing at each other's clothes. He yanks at the straps covering her chest, and she shrugs them off with a fervent impatience, allowing them to hang loose. Blue skin glows faintly in the flickering light, beads of sweat forming along the curve of her shoulders. She pushes him backward, and he stumbles, landing against a piece of broken furniture. She's on him in an instant, straddling his lap, black hair cascading around them like a silken curtain. His hands move instinctively to her waist, feeling the heat of her thighs around him. She leans forward, pressing her chest to his, her breath hot on his neck. He hears her heartbeat, rapid and forceful, echoing the frantic drumming in his own veins. Her hands tangle in his hair, and she arches her back, letting him trail desperate kisses across her collarbone. When she speaks, it's a husky whisper, but there's still that commanding edge. "You owe me your life, human. Don't forget it." He responds with a low growl, his tongue flicking along her throat. "I'm not dead yet." She laughs, a dark, throaty sound of amusement. Then her hands clamp around his wrists, and she forces them over his head, pinning him. Her strength is astonishing, and he's momentarily powerless. She leans in, pressing her chest to his. He can feel the softness of her body, the fierce rise and fall of her breathing. Don't resist, she warns, and for an instant he thinks about fighting back, but the raw desire flooding every nerve of his body wins out. He relaxes his arms, letting her keep them pinned, and she takes that as a sign of acquiescence, lowering her head to claim his mouth again in an unforgiving kiss. The pressure builds as the seconds pass, every sense overloaded. Her nails rake over his skin, leaving trails of tingling heat. She shifts against him, and he's undone by the intoxicating friction. Time warps. All he's aware of is her, this moment, the pounding of blood in his ears. When the final pieces of clothing are shrugged off or shoved aside, he's not even sure. The world around them has narrowed to a single point of scorching contact. She guides him with a fierceness that borders on a demand. Their bodies collide, a sharp gasp escaping both of them. She pins his gaze with hers, and for a single second he sees something vulnerable flicker across her face, but it's quickly swallowed by raw want. The basement's walls resonate with the sound of ragged breathing, low moans, and the drip of water from leaky pipes. The city outside continues to fall apart, but here, in this unlikely sanctuary of rubble and darkness, they ignite in a clash of desire so intense it's almost feral. Each movement is a claiming, a test of dominance that sees them grappling, pushing, panting. She sets the pace, strong thighs anchoring him. He meets her halfway, refusing to be overwhelmed, though her alien physiology and relentless drive threaten to steal his every ounce of control. Their pleasure builds like a crescendo of battle drums, echoing the fury of the war-torn night. She exhales his name in a breathless rush, the syllable rolling off her tongue with that low purr. The sound sears itself into his mind, pushing him over the edge. In the final burst of ecstasy, they cling to each other as if the world outside could disintegrate at any moment. Maybe it is. Maybe that's why they cling so desperately. When it's over, they remain locked together, slick with sweat, hearts hammering. The tension lingers, an undercurrent of unspoken truths. They're still enemies in some sense, or at least not allies in the conventional sense. Both are powerful in their own right. Slowly, Kael'ari loosens her grip on his wrists. He flexes them, feeling the bruises forming there. She shifts, sliding. Off him, breathing heavily. For a beat they say nothing, the rawness of what just happened crackling between them like electricity. Then she grabs a piece of cloth from the ground, wipes the sweat from her brow, and eyes him with that same fierce intensity. He almost expects her to taunt him or declare ownership again. Instead, she stands, retrieves her minimal clothing from the floor, and refastens it. The silence is nearly deafening. His mind whirls. He's never had an encounter so primal, so urgent. At length, she breaks the silence. We can't stay here. They'll tear this place apart before morning. She kneels, searching for her gear. Her voice is as firm and controlled as ever, as though she hasn't just unleashed an inferno of desire. He clears his throat, pushing himself upright. The battered remains of his uniform cling to him, a half-torn shirt he tugs back over. His shoulders. Right, we keep moving. He's still reeling inside, trying to process the abrupt shift from that searing collision back to the grim reality of survival. She nods, barely looking at him as she checks the charge on her weapon. The air between them crackles with unspoken tension, not just sexual but emotional. Neither acknowledges it aloud. Their partnership remains precarious, built on necessity, balanced on the razor's edge of mutual suspicion and undeniable chemistry. He restraps the plasma rifle across his back. The memory of her body is fresh in his mind, impossible to ignore, but the urgency of their situation reasserts itself with crushing force. Another distant explosion rattles the basement, dust falling in loose clouds from the cracked ceiling. She glances upward, frowns. Her voice is brisk. Let's go. They head out, ascending a battered stairwell to the street level. Darcy might be approaching, but the sky is hidden behind swirling ash and clouds of smoke. The city moans under the ongoing assault, entire blocks leveled, others teetering on the brink of collapse. Without a word, they slip into the hazy streets. The swirling dust cloaks them as they skulk toward the next objective, whatever that may be. Their plan, as haphazard as it is, revolves around infiltrating a command hub on the far side of the city. Kael'ari needs data or access codes, something that can cripple the occupying force. Rylan isn't fully convinced it'll work, but it's a chance to strike back, or at least to survive a little longer. As they creep down an alley, he casts a sidelong glance at her. She's all sharp angles and lethal grace, scanning every rooftop and broken window for threats. He wonders if she's thinking about what happened between them, if she's as shaken by it as he is, but her expression is a mask of focus, betraying nothing. He can't decide whether he respects that or hates it. Every so often, a fleeting memory of her lips crushing into his floods his mind, making his pulse jump. He forces it down, focusing on the next hazard. Two mechs stomping down a nearby boulevard, scanning for any heat signatures or movement. They find a vantage point in a collapsed parking structure, scaling up a precarious set of twisted metal beams. From the top, they see the mechs are accompanied by a squad of foot soldiers. Kael'ari motions for silence, points out a route that detours around the main thoroughfare. Rylan nods. They can't take on mechs with their limited firepower. Better to evade and keep going. Moving across a shattered catwalk, he nearly slips, his boots skidding on cracked concrete. She grabs his forearm, hauling him back to balance. They exchange a quick glance, something unspoken passing between them, a reminder that they need each other's strengths. Once they're safe on the other side, they descend into the gloom of another broken alley, stepping over bodies and debris that line the gutters. The stench of death is thick, and it's a grim reminder of what awaits them if they fail. Hours blur. They fight off isolated patrols, scramble around collapsed buildings, or hide from the scanning beams of towering drones. The synergy they build is both unspoken and reluctant, each movement a testament to survival instincts that mesh almost perfectly. She complements his strategic thinking with swift, deadly attacks that catch enemies off guard. He covers her from a distance, picking off threats that might encircle her. It's a dance of violence, and it leaves them dirty, bruised, and exhausted, but it works. Eventually, they take cover in the shell of an old structure, probably a comm station once upon a time. She checks a battered interface, trying to glean the location of the city's command hub. Rylan keeps watch by a half-shuttered window, scanning the streets for any sign of movement. His nerves are raw, adrenaline reserves depleted, and the memory of that explosive intimacy in the basement lingers at the edge of his thoughts. She steps away from the interface, lips pressed into a tight line. "It's further than I expected," she murmurs, heavily guarded. She closes her eyes, letting out a slow breath, and her shoulders tense with frustration. He watches her carefully. "What exactly is there?" he asks. She meets his gaze, quiet for a moment, then sighs. "A central comm link that coordinates all orbital strikes plus data on their war strategy. If we take it out or reroute it, we have a chance of halting the eradication of this city." "You say we?" He arches an eyebrow, crossing his arms. "I was under the impression this was your personal crusade." Her lips curl in a faint sneer. "And you were content to die here?" She shakes her head. "Help me get in. Help me break their codes, and maybe some of your people survive." He exhales. "Fine." The uneasy partnership stands. They continue their trek, but the roads grow more perilous the closer they get to the city's center. Tank-like vehicles roam the boulevards, scanning for signs of resistance. High above, streaks of light from orbital bombardments lance through the smoky sky. The sound of devastation is continuous, a backdrop of thunder and screams. At one point, they come across a downed human transport, and Kael'ari helps Rylan scavenge armor plating that might fit him. He's pleasantly surprised to find pieces that can be rigged to cover his torso and arms. She watches him secure the plates with calculating eyes, occasionally making suggestions on how to distribute the weight for maximum mobility. He thanks her with a curt nod. She only responds by rechecking her own minimal gear, ensuring her harness is snug, her weapons loaded. There's a fleeting moment where their eyes meet, and the silence between them crackles again. They press on. Finally, after skirting numerous patrols, they reach a towering structure that juts up through the charred skyline like a broken fang, the command hub. The defenses are formidable: automated turrets, squads of alien soldiers, and sensor arrays that periodically sweep the perimeter. Rylan's heart sinks at the thought of getting in. Kael'ari doesn't flinch, but he sees her jaw tighten. "Plan?" he asks quietly, though he doubts she has a well-structured one. She stares at the fortress for a few seconds. "We breach from below. There's an old maintenance tunnel that links to a sublevel. It's likely caved in, but if it's intact, we might slip past the main guards." She gestures to a half-buried hatch near the base of the structure. Rylan nods. "I'll watch your back." She nods in return, and they move in. Slipping through the rubble-strewn courtyard under the eyes of watchtowers feels like walking. A tightrope over a pit of ravenous beasts. One slip, one clank of metal, and the entire fortress's defenses would come bearing down on them. They inch closer, hearts thudding. At one point, a searchlight swings near their position, forcing them flat against a collapsed chunk of concrete. She presses against him, breath ragged, tension radiating off her. He clamps a hand over her mouth to keep any involuntary sound from escaping, and her eyes flash with irritation. Still, she doesn't pull away. Once the light passes, they scuttle into the deeper shadows, cursing silently at every small rock or shard of debris that might betray a crunch underfoot. After an excruciating approach, they reach the battered hatch that leads underground. Kael'ari carefully pries it open, the metal groaning in protest. The darkness below looks impenetrable, with the smell of damp rot wafting up. She slides. In first, agile and confident, he follows, closing the hatch behind him as quietly as possible. Inside, they're greeted by tunnels lit only by flickering emergency lights, half-choked by collapsed walls and piles of debris. The space is claustrophobic, water dripping from overhead pipes onto their shoulders. She leads the way, stepping lightly over puddles and rubble. He keeps the rifle pointed down the corridor, scanning for any sign of a lurking guard. They don't get far before the tunnel forks. One path is completely collapsed, blocking any chance of passage. The other leads deeper into the gloom. She curses under her breath and chooses the viable route. Eventually, they come across a sealed security door with an alien interface. She kneels, trying to access it, but an alert beep from the console indicates a biometric lock. She exhales, trying different sequences. The door remains stubbornly shut. "Let me try," he mutters, pushing closer. He rummages through his gear for an override tool designed for simpler locks. It's not guaranteed to work on alien tech, but sometimes the basics remain the same. She moves aside, watching his fingers fly across the console, occasionally shooting him a quizzical glance. He can sense her impatience like an electric current. Minutes tick by. The overhead lights buzz. He's sweating, each beep of rejection from the lock sending a spike of frustration through him. But finally, the console chirps, and the door slides open with a hiss. Kael'ari slinks in first, scanning the area. He follows, weapon raised. They've reached a lower maintenance chamber within the fortress. Rows of machines, piping, and humming energy conduits line the walls. The air is slightly warmer, thrumming with the power generated above. She gestures for silence, creeping forward, checking corners. Rylan catches glimpses of shadowy corridors branching off. He wonders just how big this fortress is and how many enemies lie in wait. They hear voices echoing from a side passage, a pair of guards speaking in low, gruff tones, in a language he only partially understands. Kael'ari tenses, a predator scenting prey. She motions for Rylan to circle around. "Flank them," He nods, stepping carefully. The corridor is barely lit and the guards haven't noticed them yet. He spots the alien silhouettes, heavily armed, wearing advanced armor. This won't be easy. He lifts the rifle, sights in on the first guard. At the same moment, Kael'ari leaps from the shadows with uncanny speed, closing the distance in a blur. She dispatches the second guard in a blink, her blade flashing in a lethal arc, cutting across the guard's throat with a silent efficiency that leaves him gurgling. The first guard whirls, raising a weapon, but Rylan fires a precise shot, and the alien drops. The corridor echoes with the searing sizzle of the plasma round. The guards slump to the ground, lifeless. Kael'ari kneels to check the bodies, retrieving any keycards or intel they might have. Rylan stands watch, heart racing from the burst of violence. She rises, tossing him a data chip. "This might help us access the comm level." He slots it into a portable reader strapped to his belt. The device hums, decrypting. Looks like it's a passkey for upper floors. He glances at her, nodding. We're in luck. They move on, ascending deeper into the fortress. The corridors become more guarded, and they can't avoid confrontation much longer. Soon, they're embroiled in a running firefight, ducking. Behind metal crates and pillars, as squads of alien troopers converge. Plasma bolts slice through the air, scorching walls. Rylan fires in controlled bursts, dropping enemies when they expose themselves. Kael'ari darts among them like a living, shadow blade glinting, leaving chaos in her wake. It's a harrowing gauntlet. By the time they clear the last squad and find an elevator leading to the comm level, both are panting, streaked with soot and blood. Some of it their own, most of it not. The elevator doors slide open with a mechanical groan. They slip inside. Kael'ari pressing the passkey to the reader. The elevator hums to life, starting the long climb upward. The ride is tense, the hum of the machinery almost deafening in the silence. Rylan stands on one side, cradling his rifle, feeling the sting of multiple scrapes and bruises. Kael'ari is on the other side, eyes shut for a moment, perhaps focusing, or maybe steeling herself for what's to come. The tension between them is still there, thick and tangible. He recalls the basement, the heat of her lips, the clawing, possessive way she took him. It seems like a lifetime ago, yet the vivid memory sends a surge of heat through him even now. The elevator grinds to a stop. The doors slide open onto a wide hallway lined with transparent windows overlooking a central command chamber. Below, in a sprawling control room, alien officers cluster around consoles, monitoring the city's downfall in real time. Screens flash with strategic overlays. Kael'ari gestures to a side walkway that might lead to the main console banks. They creep along, keeping low behind a railing. An alarm suddenly rings out. Their infiltration has been noticed. Below them, soldiers scramble, weapons raised, scanning the upper levels. Kael'ari curses under her breath. Rylan checks the corridor behind them. More enemies incoming. They're caught between two fronts. She motions him forward. We hold them here, or we die. He nods, jaw set. A furious battle erupts. Soldiers surge from both sides. Kael'ari leaps over the railing, plunging down into the command chamber with a savage war cry. She lands amid the startled officers, cutting them down with swift, surgical strikes. Rylan stays above, firing shot after shot to cover her, picking off those who try to aim at her from a distance. She weaves through the chaos, smashing a console screen with her forearm to get to the main interface. More troops pour in, but Rylan's vantage point helps him hold them at bay. A bullet grazes his shoulder, sending a sharp jolt of pain. He grunts, adjusting his aim to retaliate. Down below, she growls in frustration as she fights to input commands on the alien console, data swirling on the broken screens. A near lucky shot from an alien trooper cracks the railing beside Rylan, throwing him off balance. He tumbles over, crashing onto a lower platform in a cloud of dust and sparks. Pain explodes through his side. but he forces himself up, teeth clenched. Another soldier charges him. He sidesteps, slams the butt of his rifle into the trooper's skull, then fires a point-blank shot that leaves the body crumpling. The muzzle heat scorches his palms. He curses, scanning for Kael'ari. She's pinned near the main console by two heavily armored guards, each brandishing a crackling energy blade. Sparks fly as she parries, her own blade dancing in a flurry of slashes. Even in the midst of lethal combat, she moves with a visceral grace that momentarily leaves him breathless. But she's outnumbered, her weapon pinned against one enemy's blade, while the other tries to run her through from behind. Rylan stumbles forward, ignoring the agony in his side. Raising his rifle, he fires. The shot sears straight through the second guard, dropping him instantly. Freed, Kael'ari twists, delivering a killing slash to the first guard's neck. She wheels around, eyes flashing, searching for Rylan in the haze of the battle. Their gazes lock. A fleeting nod of gratitude from her, then she turns back to the console. He covers her as more soldiers flood in. The air reeks of ozone and burnt flesh. Finally, with a triumphant snarl, Kael'ari slams her fist against the console. The entire station hums, lights flickering. Suddenly, an automated voice in alien. A tongue echoes through the chamber, signifying a system override. She leaps away from the console, rolling beneath a volley of gunfire. Rylan blasts the nearest troopers, but a shot clips him in the leg. Pain flares, threatening to buckle his knee. He holds steady, focusing on returning fire. Kael'ari scurries toward him, the two meeting at a half-collapsed console for a last stand. Bullets and plasma bolts streak overhead, hitting consoles with violent bursts of sparks. "Did you do it?" he shouts above the cacophony. Voice. "Raw." She nods, panting. "Yes, the orbital strike grid is offline. Reinforcements can land now, or we can disable the city's purge. We need to get out before they lock us in. This place will be crawling with troops any second." He grimaces, gestures to the barrage of incoming enemies. "Not sure how we get out of here in one piece." She sets her jaw. "We fight." He can't help a wry grin despite the chaos. That's been their mantra all along. They stand back to back, weapons raised, bracing themselves as enemies rush in from all sides. A roar of defiance rips from their throats. The next moments are a blur of muzzle flashes, steel and sizzling beams. For all their skill, they're swarmed. Rylan feels a shot graze his ribs, sending him stumbling. Kael'ari slices through a trooper's arm, but another blasts her from behind, and she goes down with a cry. Rylan's vision narrows. He lunges, returning fire, emptying the last of his rifle's charge into the mass of soldiers. Bodies drop, but more keep coming. The rifle sputters, out of ammo. He tosses it aside, drawing a combat blade. He has no illusions about winning this fight. They're simply too outnumbered. But he won't go down without protecting her as best he can. Suddenly, an earth-shaking tremor rocks the fortress. The overhead lights flicker. The console alarm shrieks. Kael'ari staggers to her feet, half supported by a twisted chunk of metal, wounded but furious, eyes blazing. She bares her teeth in a snarl. Around them, alien soldiers hesitate as the building shakes again, huge cracks snaking through the walls. The sabotage must be destabilizing the fortress's power core. Panic spreads among the ranks. Seizing the moment, Rylan hooks an arm around Kael'ari, helping her limp across the command chamber. She hisses in pain, but leans on him. They make for a side passage, half collapsed from the fighting. Another quake rattles the structure, sending chunks of debris raining down. A large beam collapses, crushing several soldiers who were about to fire on them. They stagger on, half blind in the swirling dust and smoke. At last, they reach an exit ramp that spirals downward toward an auxiliary hangar. It's chaos there too, alarms blaring, personnel scrambling for escape ships. They skid behind a cargo crate, panting, battered. Kael'ari's arm trembles where she's clutching at a wound in her side, dark blue blood staining her garments. "Stay with me," he mutters, voice rough. He tears a strip from his shirt, presses it against her wound. She lets out a sharp gasp. He looks around for a craft, spotting a small shuttle with its engines spooling up. Soldiers are converging. On it, likely trying to flee. Another tremor shakes the floor, and overhead lights flicker ominously. He grips her shoulder. "We take that shuttle." She nods through gritted teeth, eyes fierce despite the pain. They surge forward, ignoring the protests of their battered bodies. A final confrontation unfolds as they battle the last group of alien troopers guarding the shuttle. Ryland's blade slashes across an armored chestplate, sparks flying. Kael'ari hurls a stolen sidearm, firing point-blank at a soldier's helmet. The soldier collapses, leaving the path clear to the craft's hatch. They scramble inside, seals hissing. Ryland slams the controls to retract the ramp. Kael'ari, panting, slides into the pilot's seat, flicking switches with shaky hands. The shuttle rumbles to life, engines roaring. Outside, the fortress convulses, walls crumbling, floors buckling. The overhead hangar doors crack open. She grips the throttle, and the shuttle rises unsteadily, weaving around falling debris. A final quake knocks out the hangar's supports, and the entire roof caves in behind them as they accelerate out into the smoldering sky. Freedom. The battered city stretches below, half in ruins, but no longer under immediate orbital threat. Kael'ari pilots them through the drifting smoke clouds, heading for the outskirts where the enemy presence might be thinner. Rylan watches the fortress collapse in on itself, a twisted mass of metal and stone swallowed by dust. For a moment, he allows himself a flicker of triumph. They did it. They crippled the city's purge systems. Maybe they saved some lives. Kael'ari's labored breathing brings him back to reality. She's losing blood from the wound in her side, her jaw clenched. He reaches over, taking the controls briefly. She slumps back, eyes shut, wincing. Her entire body trembles with pain. "Hold on," he murmurs, scanning the console for an autopilot or at least a stable flight setting. The readouts are in alien script, but he manages to find a basic function that stabilizes the craft's heading. He kneels beside her, lifting the edge of her garment to assess the wound. It's deep, bleeding steadily. He curses under his breath, rummaging through their meager medical supplies. She winces as he applies pressure. "Damn it, Kael'ari," he growls, ignoring how strange it feels to say her name with such familiarity. "Stay awake." She hisses in response, but forces her eyes open, gripping his wrist with surprising strength. He fumbles with the medkit, injecting a coagulant into the tissue around the wound. She bites her lip to stifle a scream, sweat beading on her forehead. Outside, the battered shuttle glides over the broken cityscape. An eerie calm has fallen, likely because the fortress's systems are offline. The war still rages somewhere, but here, it feels like a brief reprieve. Rylan manages to wrap a bandage around her midsection, hoping it's enough to keep her stable until they find somewhere to land. She exhales, gaze hazy. Her voice is weaker than before. "You're still mine?" she murmurs, attempting a wry smirk. It comes out more like a grimace. He snorts softly, relief mixing with lingering adrenaline. "Sure," he says, not even sure what that means anymore. Gently, he shifts her into a reclining position, checking her vitals as best he can with the primitive tools they have. She's alive, but she needs proper medical care soon. He takes the pilot's seat again, scanning the horizon for any sign of a safe landing spot. Perhaps somewhere outside the city's direct line of fire. Issa. Gonzalo's readout suggests there's a rocky plateau a few kilometers away, beyond the main conflict zone. He guides the shuttle in that direction, each minute feeling like an hour. Kael'ari's breathing is shallow, and she's drifting in and out of consciousness. The entire time he can't shake the memory of her earlier fire, her unwavering strength that dominated him both in battle and in that moment of raw intimacy. Now she's so vulnerable, relying on him to keep her alive. He grits his teeth, spurring the shuttle to move faster. At last, the plateau comes into view. A stretch of barren land dotted with jagged rocks. He maneuvers the shuttle in for a landing, the craft's engines sputtering with the damage it sustained during their escape. The landing is rough, jolting them in their seats, but they touch down in one piece. He exhales a shaky breath, a wave of relief washing over him. He unstraps Kael'ari, gathering her in his arms. She's feverish, her skin clammy despite its usually intense warmth. The bullet or energy blast might have cauterized part of the wound, but there's still internal damage. He carries her out into the scorching daylight, scanning the desolate area for any immediate threats. It seems clear enough. Dust swirls in a dry wind, the sky still choked with distant smoke. He sets her down in the shade of a large rock outcropping, then races back to the shuttle to grab the med kit and rations. He kneels by her side, carefully elevating her head. Her eyes flutter open for a moment, unfocused. She tries to speak, but he hushes her, pressing a water canister to her lips. She sips, then coughs. "Stubborn human," she mutters, voice raspy. "Yeah, well, you're not easy to handle either," he replies, attempting a brittle smile. He checks the bandage, adjusting it. Blood seeps through, though slower than before. "We need real medical supplies." She grimaces. "Scouts might come. Enemies?" Her eyelids droop, but she forces them open again. "Need to hide." He nods, scanning the rocky terrain. There's a crevice nearby that might provide some cover. Lifting her gently, he carries her there, ignoring the protests from his own battered body. Once they're tucked in a shallow cave-like space, he props her up against a smooth rock face. A moment passes in tense silence as he tries to figure out the next step. They can't stay here indefinitely, but she's in no condition to move far. He sets up a small perimeter alarm with a tripwire around the cave entrance, just enough to alert them if anyone approaches. Then he returns to her side. She's breathing shallowly, eyes half closed. Guilt and concern churn in his gut. They've come so far, survived so much, and she's been the driving force behind most of it. Even as a prisoner, he found himself aligning with her cause, or maybe just with her will. He touches her forehead. She's burning up. She stirs, eyes focusing on him. He sees flickers of anger, pride, 1,000 unspoken things. "Don't look at me like that," she murmurs, trying to muster some of her usual command. "I'm fine." He shakes his head. "You're not fine." He adjusts the bandage again. Fresh blood stains his fingers, and he curses under his breath. "Damn it, Kael'ari, just hold on." She grabs his wrist, surprising him with the strength of her grip. "Don't worry," she forces out. "I've had worse." But her eyelids droop. He leans closer, panic flaring in his chest. "Stay awake," he demands, lightly tapping her cheek. Her eyes flutter. She tries to smirk, the expression weak. "Are you giving me orders now?" Her voice trembles. He can't bring himself to retort. He just presses his forehead gently to hers. She's so warm, and for a moment the memory of her fierce demand, "Shut up, human, I am not asking," flashes through his mind. Now he would give anything to hear her bark orders at him again, to see that unstoppable drive in her eyes. "Yeah," he whispers, "maybe I am." Her lips twitch in something like amusement, but she fades again, too weak to hold the expression. He watches her, time stretching painfully. The midday sun bakes the rocks outside, making the cave stifling. He can't risk going far to find help, and there's no guarantee any friendly forces are close by. His mind races with possibilities, calling in a distress signal, waiting for her to recover enough to move, or braving a solo journey to get better med supplies. Each option carries serious risk. At last, he decides to attempt a short-range signal on the shuttle's comm system. Maybe some faction that opposes the invaders or a neutral group will pick it up. He gently lays her down, making sure she's stable, then returns to the shuttle. The interior is scorching. He powers up the console, scanning for any available frequencies. Most are jammed or overshadowed by encryption. He tries a broad emergency band, broadcasting coded pleas for assistance, hoping someone might respond. Silence. He waits. Seconds ticking by. Still nothing. The sense of helplessness gnaws at him. Returning to Kael'ari, he sees her eyes shut, her breathing shallow but steady. He kneels beside her, pressing a palm to her cheek. "Hey," he says softly. No response. He checks her. Pulse. It's there, faint but alive. Unsure of what else to do, he cleans the wound again, applies fresh bandages. She stirs, wincing at his touch. Her eyes flicker open, watery with pain. "You can go," she rasps. "Leave me." His jaw tightens. "No." He continues wrapping the bandage, voice firm. "I'm not leaving you here." She tries to laugh, but it comes out as a gasping cough. "Still disobedient," she teases, though there's no strength in it. He finishes his makeshift medical work and leans back, propping himself against the rock beside her. She sags against him, her head on his shoulder. For a moment there's a fragile silence. The hours drag on. He dozes off in fits, always jolting awake at the slightest sound. He keeps checking the perimeter tripwire, scanning the horizon for any sign of movement. Smoke from the shattered city stains the sky a dusky grey. Eventually, he gently shifts Kael'ari so she's lying more comfortably on a folded piece of cloth. Her fever breaks and returns in waves, each one sapping more of her energy. He tries feeding her sips of water bit by bit. Night falls, the temperature dropping sharply. With a shaky exhale, he wraps his arms around her, sharing body heat. She mutters in her half-sleep, occasionally trembling. A pang of something deeper. Then lust or partnership stirs in his chest, a protective urge. He barely recognizes himself. He's always been a lone wolf, a soldier of fortune or duty, never letting attachments form. But this alien warrior has carved a place in his psyche in a matter of days, with her ferocious demands and her scorching intimacy. Now, watching her slip in and out of consciousness, he realizes how much he needs her to survive. Not just because she saved him or because they still have a war to fight, but because he can't bear to see that untamed spark extinguished. Long into the night he dozes with her in his arms, mind whirling with half-formed plans. The sound of a small explosion in the distance jolts him awake at some point. He tenses, listening. No immediate danger. He breathes, checking her again. She's alive, though pale. He strokes a strand of black hair from her face, anger flaring at the cruelty of this war. At dawn, a crackle from his beltcom unit wakes him fully. He fumbles for it. The emergency broadcast channel he set up is buzzing with static and a faint voice. To any survivors in the southwestern quadrant, identify your location. We have limited rescue operations. Do you copy? Adrenaline spikes through him. He scrambles out from under Kael'ari, pressing the transmitter. "This is Rylan. I'm with a wounded ally. Coordinates roughly 80 clicks west of the city center, near a rocky plateau. Request medical assistance. Do you copy?" Static. Then a muffled reply. "Copy, Rylan. We have patchy signal. A shuttle can break off from the main group, but it might be hours." He exhales relief. "We'll be here. Hurry, please." The comm goes silent again, but they have a glimmer of hope now. He turns back to Kael'ari, crouching by her side. "Help is coming," he whispers. She's barely conscious, but her eyes flutter open slightly, relief or perhaps just exhaustion in them. Hours pass in painstaking waiting. Finally, the distant hum of an approaching engine echoes across the plateau. Rylan rushes outside, waving his arms. A small rescue craft hovers down in a swirl of dust, the ramp descending. A pair of medics in rugged gear run out, scanning the area, weapons at the ready. He calls to them, pointing at the cave. They hurry. Inside, finding Kael'ari. She stirs, opening her eyes as they begin to work on her wound. Her grip clamps on Rylan's wrist, as if afraid to be separated from him. He kneels beside her, brushing a hand gently over her cheek. The medics speak in hushed tones. She's stable, but needs more advanced care soon. Carefully, they hoist her onto a stretcher, carrying her to the ship. Rylan follows every step, refusing to let her out of his sight. Once inside, the rescue craft's engines power up, ascending rapidly. He sits beside her, cradling her hand, ignoring the curious stares of the medics. She's still an alien warrior to them, but to him, she saved his life more times than he can count, and he's returned the favor. They're bound by something deeper than their species or the conflict raging across this planet. As the craft heads for a safer zone, he leans over her. Her eyelids flutter open, and he sees the faint glimmer of that same fierce spirit that first compelled him. She tries to speak, voice still weak. "Human," she begins. "Rylan," he corrects, almost tenderly. "I have a name." She tries to manage a smirk, but fails. "You do, indeed," she breathes. "But you're still mine." A soft laugh escapes him, quiet, disbelieving. He brushes her hair back from her face, pressing a light kiss to her forehead. "You're not as good at asking nicely as you think." Her eyes drift shut again, and he squeezes her hand. "I'm here," he whispers. "Just rest." They land in a makeshift forward operating base, a cluster of tents and vehicles staffed by ragtag human resistance and allied species. Kael'ari is rushed to a medical tent. Rylan stands guard outside, pacing like a caged beast. Hours pass before a harried medical officer emerges, alien in appearance, but wearing a universal medic symbol. The officer addresses him in halting common tongue, assuring him that Kael'ari will live. He feels a wave of relief, so profound it nearly buckles his knees. In the following days, the city remains contested territory, but with the fortress offline, the invaders' hold is weakened. Reinforcements arrive from orbit, setting up new fronts to reclaim what's left of the city. Rylan finds himself conscripted into the local forces, valued for his experience and knowledge of infiltration. He's restless, spending every free moment at Kael'ari's bedside, though she remains unconscious, body healing at a frustratingly slow pace. One evening, as the sun sets in a wash of crimson and gold, he slips into the tent. She's lying still, monitors displaying her vitals. The bandages on her side are fresh, the bleeding long since stopped. He pulls a stool beside the cot, gazing at her face. Even in rest, she looks regal, fierce. He reaches out, takes her hand gently. The days of war and bloodshed weigh on him. But here, in this moment of quiet, he feels something like hope. Her eyes open, slowly focusing on him. A faint smile curves her lips. "I take it you're waiting for me to awaken," she murmurs, voice still husky from disuse. He chuckles under his breath, the sound tinged with relief. "Figured someone had to keep an eye on you, or else you'd get yourself into more trouble." She shifts, wincing at the soreness. Then her gaze sharpens, zeroing in on him. "What's the situation outside?" "We have control of some parts of the city. Reinforcements are planning a full sweep. The fortress we sabotaged is gone." "You did it." Her expression softens for just a moment, but it doesn't remain so for long. "Good." Silence hangs between them. He senses something unsaid, swirling in the air. Finally, he ventures, "You almost died, Kael'ari." A quiet exhalation. "Wouldn't be the first time," she answers flatly, though the tension in her posture betrays deeper emotions. "What about you, human? Did you consider just leaving?" "Maybe," he admits, eyes locked on hers. "But I didn't want to." She regards him for a long beat, that predatory glint returning to her gaze. It's a reminder of the woman who pinned him down, demanded he submit, demanded his loyalty, demanded his very body in the midst of war. Slowly, she lifts a hand to trace the bruises still visible on his neck from earlier battles. "You continue to surprise me." "Likewise," he replies, voice thick. Her touch sparks a memory of their primal encounter, the fusion of violence and desire that ignited something he's never felt before. He leans in a bit closer, lowering his voice. "Are you always this impossible?" She smirks, though the motion clearly strains her. "You have no idea." There's a pause, a shimmering tension. Then she adds quietly, "I'll recover, fast. And when I do, there's still a war to finish. My people, they'll need me to lead them. The threat isn't gone." He nods, mind turning over the logistics, the battles yet to come. But there's something personal, intimate, overshadowing those concerns. "I'll stand beside you," he says, surprising himself with the certainty in his own voice. "If you'll have me, we fight well together." Her dark eyes flicker, and she shifts, testing the limits of her mending body. Pain crosses her face, but she fights it down. "I will need a strong warrior at my side," she concedes softly, "even if he is human." He almost laughs. "I'm more than just human. You said so yourself." She meets his gaze, and the smirk that plays on her lips is full of that commanding confidence that first set him ablaze. "Yes," she says, "you are." She grips his collar weakly, tugging him closer until their faces nearly touch, echoing that first moment in the dusty street. Her voice drops to a husky murmur. "I said you're mine. Do you still object?" He inhales a shaky breath. Not anymore. He closes the last centimeter, pressing his lips to hers in a gentler kiss than any they've shared. It's a tentative moment, charged but lacking the desperation of before. She responds carefully, mindful of her injuries, but the electricity remains. Even battered and barely recovered, she radiates a fierce magnetism. He kisses her softly, a silent promise that he's not going anywhere. When they break apart, she rests back against the pillows, eyes fluttering with fatigue. He brushes a thumb over her cheek. "Rest," he whispers. "I'll be here when you wake." She nods, letting her eyelids close, slipping into a merciful sleep. Outside, the base hums with renewed energy, rumors spreading of future offensives. But here, in the subdued light of the medical tent, a fragile peace settles over them. Rylan remains at her side, hand intertwined with hers, the memory of their explosive union coursing through him. This is not some gentle romance. It's forged in conflict, hardened by danger. Yet it's real, it's theirs. Days blend into a week. Kael'ari regains strength at a remarkable pace, testament to her species' resilience. By the time she can stand without collapsing, the city's outskirts have been partially liberated, and Allied forces are consolidating for a grand push against the last pockets of resistance. Rylan helps her train, carefully at first, sparring in short bursts so she can build stamina without aggravating her injuries. Their fights are still intense, full of heat and challenge, but there's a new layer of respect beneath the aggression. As the final offensive nears, the tension in the camp grows. Soldiers, human and alien alike, gather around hollow maps, detailing strategies for a decisive strike. Scouts report that the occupying forces have entrenched themselves at the industrial sector. It'll be a vicious battle to uproot them once and for all. On the morning of the assault, Kael'ari straps on fresh armor, thin but reinforced plating that doesn't hinder her movements. Rylan, now in partial command of a combined unit of human survivors and alien rebels, helps coordinate the lines. They share a brief moment of privacy behind a supply tent, the dawn sky streaked with red. She stands tall, arms crossed, still, sporting bruises, but radiating that indomitable aura. "You ready for this?" he asks, not bothering to hide his concern. She arches an eyebrow, a small grin curving her lips. "Always," she answers, stepping closer. Their eyes lock, and for a moment the world around them fades. He can't resist kissing her, a swift, fierce press of lips that ends too soon. She smirks, hooking a finger under his chin. "Don't get yourself killed, human. I'd hate to have to find another stubborn partner." He laughs quietly. "Same goes for you." Then they separate, slipping back into their roles as leaders. Of this ragtag alliance, the final push begins at sunrise. In the battered city streets, it feels like déjà vu, gunfire, explosions, the thunderous roar of mechanized units. But this time, they have momentum. Kael'ari moves at the head of the alien contingent, her blade flashing, rallying her people. With unyielding ferocity, Rylan leads a squad of human fighters, coordinating with her forces via comms. Their synergy, forged in adversity, proves unstoppable. Building by building, block by block, they close in on the industrial heart of the city. Enemy lines crumble under the combined onslaught. Mortars and aerial support tear through entrenched positions, while ground troops mop up resistance. Rylan and Kael'ari meet at the fringes of the final holdout, exchanging a nod in the midst of chaos. She leaps onto a toppled column, raising her blade high, rallying her warriors for the last surge. The final confrontation is brutal. The defenders unleash everything they have: heavy artillery, automated turrets, squads of merciless shock troopers. Casualties mount on both sides. Rylan's voice grows hoarse from issuing commands and battle cries. Kael'ari's arm is gashed by shrapnel, but she fights on, eyes blazing. They breach the main factory gates in an explosion of twisted metal. Inside, the battle crescendos. Pillars crumble, machinery ignites. Smoke fills the air. Kael'ari and Rylan fight side by side, blades and bullets tearing through the last stand of the enemy. Her war cry echoes off the walls, matched by the roar of the Allied forces. One by one, the occupying soldiers fall or surrender. In the span of a few breathless minutes, it's over. Silence reigns as the dust settles. The industrial sector is a ruined husk, but it's theirs. Kael'ari stands in the midst of the wreckage, blood trickling down her armor. Rylan approaches, chest heaving. They lock eyes, surrounded by the moans of the wounded, the cheers of the victors. Then, in full view of everyone, she tosses her blade aside, grabs his collar and pulls him into a savage, claiming kiss. The battle-weary soldiers around them exchange glances, some cheering, others simply too stunned to react. Rylan cups her face, ignoring the pain in his limbs, returning the kiss with equal intensity. It's raw, triumphant, a testament to all they've endured. When they break apart, she's breathing hard, eyes bright with triumph. "We did it," she murmurs, pressing her forehead to his. He nods, adrenaline still pounding. "Yeah," he says, voice trembling with exhaustion and relief. "It's over." She shakes her head, a rueful smile curving her lips. "Not over, but we've won this battle." Her gaze sweeps the ruined sector. Allies roam, gathering weapons, securing prisoners. The city has a chance to rebuild now. The planet might find some measure of peace, at least for a time. He wraps an arm around her waist, supporting her as she leans into him. They're both bleeding, battered, on the brink of collapse, but they're alive, together. She turns, pressing her face into his neck, her breath warm against his skin. 1,000 unsaid words flow between them. He tightens his hold, no longer caring who sees. Let them see. She's his alien warrior, and he's her stubborn human, and they've fought and bled to carve out this moment of victory. Later, as the sun sets on a city free of invaders, they find a quiet corner in the battered courtyard to tend each other's wounds. The medics are overloaded with the more seriously injured, so they take turns cleaning cuts and sealing gashes. She hisses when he presses disinfectant on a deep scratch across her ribs. He tries to be gentle, apologizing under his breath. She smirks through the pain, mocking his concern before softening her gaze. Tucking her hair behind an ear, she studies him, still flushed from the day's exertion. "I think," she says softly, "I'll keep you around human. You've proven..." "Interesting," He suppresses a grin, focusing on wrapping a bandage. How generous of you! Despite the banter, emotion tugs at his chest. They've survived impossible odds, forging a bond that transcends the differences between their species. She lifts his chin, and he sees in her eyes a reflection of the same fierce bond he feels. When she finally sleeps that night, it's in his arms under a makeshift shelter. The city's nights are cold, but they share warmth, bodies pressed close. There's no one to interrupt, no urgent threat to rattle them awake, just the crackling of a nearby fire and the quiet bustle of victory celebrations in the distance. He lies there, holding her, mind drifting over all they've lost and won. In these whirlwind days, she stirs once, murmuring his name, then settles back into slumber. Months pass in a kind of surreal blur. Reconstruction begins. Alliances form between various species who join the cause after hearing of the fortress's downfall. Kael'ari becomes a respected figure, a symbol of defiance against tyranny, though she resists any formal leadership role. Rylan often stands at her side, drawn into political meetings he once would have scorned. He watches her negotiate with sharp wit, commanding respect even among those who once would have dismissed her as an outcast. He sees how easily her strength translates from battlefield to council chamber. Every word a challenge, every step a reminder, she bows to no one. During quiet moments, they still fight each other. Friendly sparring that inevitably ends in a tangle of limbs and heated glances that lead to more private encounters. Their physical bond remains powerful, raw, sometimes downright explosive, but there's a growing tenderness beneath the surface, an acceptance that they rely on each other. Neither would admit it openly, but in rare, unguarded moments, he sees, in her eyes, something that's almost like love. Or maybe it's a warrior's version of it, fierce, possessive, without the usual softness. They stand together on the day the final treaty is signed, ensuring the planet's sovereignty and offering a path for humans and aliens to coexist without subjugation. She's dressed in a formal version of her minimal attire, a shimmering alien, fabric that accentuates her blue skin. He's in a repaired military uniform, trying not to squirm under the pomp and ceremony. When the formalities end and the crowd disperses, she leans in, whispering in his ear. "I hate ceremonies," she confesses, her breath warm against his cheek. He half smiles. "I know, but it's better than being shot at," she gives. A faint laugh, turning to face him fully. The sun catches the subtle sheen of her skin, illuminating the curve of her cheekbone. He feels an odd flutter in his chest. She lifts a hand, brushes a scar on his jawline. "You look like a soldier." "Again," he chuckles. "Well, I am a soldier." She tilts her head. "Not just a soldier, mine." The words are said half playfully, half serious, reminiscent of that first moment she demanded he obey. But now they ring differently, with a warmth that wasn't there before. He sweeps an arm around her waist. "You're impossible, Kael'ari." She smirks. "And you're still disobedient." Then she pulls him in for a fierce, lingering kiss, ignoring the stares of dignitaries and onlookers around them. For once, he doesn't protest. He melts into her, letting the heat of her body and the memory of all they've endured wash over him. The noise of the crowd fades. There's only her lips, her taste, her presence, powerful, demanding, and undeniably his partner. "When they break apart," she whispers, "you will come with me tonight. No arguments." His heart pounds. Even after all this time, the commanding lilt in her voice sends a thrill through him. "Yes, ma'am," he teases. She narrows her eyes in a mock glare, then laughs softly, the sound vibrating through his chest as she steps away, leading him from the ceremony grounds. Later that evening, under the cool glow of alien moonlight, they find their way to a private room in a partially rebuilt structure at the city's edge. The windows overlook the skyline, where construction lights glow like fireflies, rebuilding. What war tried to destroy, Inside, she locks the door, removing the ceremonial harness with deliberate slowness. He watches, breath catching at each inch of revealed skin. When she turns, her eyes gleam with the same hunger he's come to know so well. He can't resist, crossing the room in 3 swift strides, capturing her mouth in a kiss that speaks. Of all the nights he worried he'd lose her. She answers with equal fervor, pressing close, her hands already working at the clasps on his uniform. It's a dance they've perfected, urgent, unrelenting, yet tinted now with a rare tenderness that neither acknowledges out loud. They sink onto the makeshift bed, limbs tangling, breath mingling. Their bodies recall the pattern of desire, each curve and line known by memory. Her skin glows in the moonlight, a faint shimmer that intensifies with each ragged exhalation. She presses him down, whispering in a low, throaty tone, "Shut up, human. I'm not asking." He half smiles even as his heart hammers. "I remember," he murmurs, voice rough. The tension coils, spirals. She moves against him, kisses scorching, a trail along his throat. His hands roam, reacquainting themselves with every dip and hollow of her body. The sense of danger lingers, the memory of near death fueling their every touch. It's an addiction, a need that's become their solace in a universe of chaos. The clothes fall away, each piece discarded on the floor. They meet skin to skin, the warmth of her body lighting a fire inside him. Their kisses turn frantic, devouring. She nips his lip, sets him alight with a primal growl that resonates deep in his core. He grasps her hips, guiding her, and for a time they lose themselves in the unspoken language of flesh against flesh, hearts pounding like war drums. When the final wave of ecstasy crests, it's with a fervor that rivals any battlefield frenzy. She cries out, nails digging into his shoulders, and he answers with a hoarse shout of his own, tension snapping like a bowstring. Afterward, they lie entwined, breaths ragged, foreheads pressed together. In the hush that follows, the only sounds are the distant hum of reconstruction outside and their slowing heartbeats. Neither speaks for a long while, content to let the shared warmth linger. Eventually she shifts, resting her head on his chest, black hair spilling across his skin. He strokes her back in idle patterns, feeling the slight ridges of scars beneath his fingertips. She exhales, and it vibrates softly against him. Finally she breaks the silence. "I never asked," she says in a low voice. "Your story, before all this." He considers. "There's not much to tell. I was a soldier, a mercenary, sometimes fighting for a cause I believed in, sometimes just surviving. Then I got caught up in that mission, stealing data, and it led me to you." He touches a fingertip to her chin, tilting her face so he can see her eyes. "What about you?" Her gaze flickers. "I was exiled from my clan. They wanted the war, I wanted something else. So I left, or they forced me out. I realized I could fight them from the outside. Sabotage what they wanted." She lowers her eyes briefly. "I never expected to ally with a human. But then, there you were." He brushes a kiss across her temple. "I'm glad." She closes her eyes, letting that moment of vulnerability settle between them. Eventually, she sits up, stretching. He admires the lines of her body, the toned strength that first caught his attention. "We should rest," she says, though part of her tone suggests otherwise. He chuckles, tugging her back down into his arms. "We will," he murmurs. "But not yet." She laughs softly, the sound rich in the moonlit room. They dissolve into another heated tangle, the raw magnetism between them as potent as ever. In the morning, rays of golden sunlight pierce through the window, revealing a city half in ruins, half in rebirth. Rylan stands by the glass, pulling on his trousers while Kael'ari lounges on the bed, watching him with a lazy satisfaction. She looks content, but behind her eyes lingers that eternal readiness for conflict. It's part of who she is, who they both are. Even in peace, they're poised to fight for what matters. He glances over at her, a small smile tugging his lips. "So," he begins, adjusting his belt. "What now?" She sits up, stretching, letting the sheets slide away. The sight is enough to kindle fresh heat in his veins, but he tamps it down. She smirks, well aware of the effect she has on him. "We rebuild," she says simply. "Then we protect what we've taken back." He nods. "And us?" Her expression softens, though her voice remains as confident as ever. "You really need to ask?" She rises, crossing the room with a predatory grace. When she stands before him, she places a palm on his chest, eyes locking with his. "You belong to me, Rylan. I thought we established that." He laughs under his breath, cupping her chin. "Right," he says, meeting her challenging gaze. "And you belong to me." She narrows her eyes in playful defiance. "I belong to no one." He scoffs, about to argue, but she grips his collar, pulling him close. "But," she adds quietly, "I will stay by your side, if you can keep up." He kisses her then, slow and sure, sealing the promise. Outside, the city stirs, life returning to the once-dead streets. They dress, preparing for another day, of forging alliances, quelling pockets of unrest, and ensuring no new threat rises from the ashes. Each step forward they take it together, bound by blood, war, and an undeniable, scorching love. As they step out into the bustling morning, he glances at her, that irrepressible smirk on his face. "Lead the way, O fearless alien." She snorts. "Shut up, human," she retorts, voice dripping with her familiar confidence. "I'm not asking." But her hand slips into his, a quiet, unspoken gesture that speaks volumes. He squeezes lightly, following her into the rebuilt dawn, heart thrumming with anticipation for whatever dangers and delights lie ahead. And if it's war they face again, or peace they struggle to maintain, he knows one thing: they'll face it together, weapons in hand, hearts pounding in unison, and lips meeting in a fierce promise when the smoke clears.